Hello, everyone. This is Dr. DeAndrea Matthews. I am the founder and CEO of Aldin Publications. Thank you for joining me this evening for our live Q&A for writers. So this is our first writing Q&A. So if you have any questions, think about them. Go ahead, drop them in the comments as you're joining. Let me know if you're live or if you're watching the replay. And we're going to see if we can get to as many of your writing questions as possible this evening. I've received some questions already. Just, sending me DMs, sending me messages, some other writers sending me questions. So I have some already, but I cannot wait to hear from you and hear all of the questions that you have. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our live stream on this evening. And as you are joining, tell me where you are joining from. And I also want to know if you are already a writer, if you're already working on a manuscript, if you are an author already, if you've already published a book or something, whether it's a book chapter, an article, anything along those lines, let me know that. And then any other things that you want to let me know about your writing process. We could talk about what age you started writing, when you knew that you wanted to be an author, any of those things. So it's kind of an open forum this evening. So it's not a particular script, it's not a particular dialogue. We're just taking questions about the writing process. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the writing process, writing a book is separate from publishing a book, which is still separate from selling your book. So I want to just emphasize that for a moment, because sometimes authors get involved with the process. Hello, Anita. Thanks for joining. They get involved with the process and they seem to think that writing a book is going to solve all of their money woes. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. For example, the average author only sells about 250 copies of their book. So if you don't have a plan for book marketing, if you don't have a book promotion plan, those are all things that come with selling your book. Writing the book sometimes is the easy part, because you get the book written and that's done, that's over with. And then you go through the process of publishing, whether you're self-publishing, whether you're going the traditional publishing route, or whether you're going with a hybrid publishing company like Aldin Publications. All of those options are available to you in the publishing process. But then once your book is published, you still have to sell your book. And the way that the industry has been moving over the last 10 to 15 years, a lot more of that is on the author, whether you're self-published or whether you're traditionally published. If you're traditionally published, they want you to have somewhat of a following, somewhat of an email list already. So they want you to have, and I wouldn't say that there are particular numbers, even though there are some benchmarks that are expected for traditional publishing, but they want you to have a following. They want you to have an email list. They want you to have a certain number of followers on social media. So there are certain things that you need to have in place before a traditional publishing company will even look your way. But having said that, you'll want to build your author platform from the very first moment that you start or make a decision that you're going to publish your book and become an author. So those are just some preliminary things. But again, the writing process is separate from the publishing process. The publishing process is separate from selling your book. There are specific tasks and a specific mindset that is needed for each part of those processes. All right. So Anita says, can you talk about media kits? We're just going to jump right on in there. So, okay, media kits. I don't have my the specifics in front of me, but essentially a media kit is a professional presentation for getting your information to media outlets and media personnel. And I say it like that because sometimes it could be your local newspapers. It could be your radio stations, it could be podcasters, it could be any number of people who may want to see your media kit. So the media kit should include whether you're sometimes it's for authors, sometimes it's for speakers, sometimes you're both. So depending on what your role is, how your media kit would look versus someone else's. So the media kit is really customized, but it should have for authors your book announcement, your press release. It should have, again, the book announcement will have the cover art, your cover image for your book. It'll have your ISBN number. If it hasn't already been published, it will have the date of publication or when your book is expected to come out, where it will be available. Again, whether it's specific online retailers, whether it's exclusively on Amazon, where will your book be available so people know how to get it. The media kit's going to look different if it is going to, for example, libraries and bookstores. You would need what's known as a sales sheet in that case, because the sales sheet, again, has not only the ISBN number and your book's specific information, but it has ordering information for those specific entities, because, of course, bookstores as well as libraries need additional information. They want to know genre, they want to know other things about um, where they can find your book, how they can order your book. They also know their own target audience. They know the people who shop at their store. They know the people who frequent their bookstore, that frequent their library, etc. So is it appropriate for their audience? Those are all things to consider when creating your media kit. So I hope that answered your question, Anita. Thank you. All right, so we are in the midst of our live Q&A. So as you're coming in, say hello and let me know what your questions are. Again, I'm answering questions, anything dealing with the writing process. You can ask me that question. Hello, Brian. Thanks for joining. So ask me any questions. I am an open book this evening, and that does not happen often. So everyone who's joining me is joining me for an open book session. So anything that you want to know, it's all fair game this evening. So while we are, while people are joining us, while you're jumping right on in, talking about the writing process, let's see, there's a question. Haha. Is there such thing as writer's block? So for those of you who follow me on social media, you know that I recently did a webinar on writer's block. And for those of you who want to go and watch the replay, it's available on my Expertise TV webinar platform. And I'll drop that in the comments in a moment. If not, at the very end, I'll go back and make sure that's dropped in the comments for anyone who wants to watch that replay. But is there a such thing as writer's block? I do not believe that there is a such thing as writer's block, and I will tell you why. Now, writer's block is something that some people legitimately say that they suffer from. It is not an option for me, and the reason why is I am what I would call a technical writer. And I say that not using any industry ease, but I say that because there are steps that I take in the beginning as a part of the pre-writing process. And the pre-writing process I explain in one of the freebies that's on my website as well. But in the pre-writing process, there are some steps that you can go through so that you don't have to worry about writer's block. And if you go through each of these steps, you have the documents, you have the information needed, so you don't have writer's block. You continue to write through what could be down periods or where you feel like you lack inspiration and things of that nature. So as far as I'm concerned, when I go through this personally, and also when I take my writers through this, you start with really what I call a brain dump. You kind of take all the ideas that you have for books in your head, and you just kind of get it all out of your head and onto a piece of paper. And I tend to be more analog than digital initially. So I like doing brain dumps on large pieces of paper, the great big Post-it notes. I love Post-it notes. I love paper. I love pens and journals. So I'll get a great big piece of paper and just start writing everything down, or I'll get a dry erase board and just start writing everything down. So I'll take all the ideas out of my head first and do a brain dump. And from that brain dump, I'm able to kind of categorize things that go together, things that can be grouped together, maybe the same topic or theme, and then move from the brain dump to brainstorming. Now I'm going to really dig deeper into these topics to see, okay, what are the other things that I could talk about underneath these topics, underneath this umbrella? And I'll take that information, do a mind map, which helps me to really outline what each chapter is going to be about. The mind map then becomes the outline for the book. Now, the outline gives you a skeleton, so you know what each chapter is going to be about. You'll know what each subchapter is going to be about. So you have the skeleton, like I said, for your book, and you know exactly what you're supposed to be writing about. Now, there's some additional steps that you can do when it comes to scene development. You can actually have a picture of a scene. For example, I use that in my book, Almost Doesn't Count, when there's a scene where they're in the pool hall. And I actually had a picture of a pool hall because I needed to see that visual. So I'll remember not just, okay, yep, they got a pool table, they got a bar, they got a bathroom over here and things like that. But I wanted to see it because I needed to be able to see it so that I can describe the smells and the things that are going on, what they're seeing. You want to engage all the five senses to really develop your scene. So again, with all these different tools in place, that is why I don't think that there's a such thing as writer's block. Good question. All right. Who is your favorite nonfiction and fiction writer? So, hmm, off the bat, I already know who my favorite fiction writer is. My favorite fiction writer is Ted Decker, and I actually got this book. Uh-oh, it's a little glare on there, but this book is The Circle by Ted Decker. It's a Circle series, and I read this. I actually brought these from the library when I read them. I was on a hunt. DPL, Detroit Public Library, saw plenty of me because I was going to all the branches to try and find the series. I read them from the library, and then I just got the collection for Christmas. So Ted Decker is my absolute all-time favorite fiction writer. I don't really have a favorite nonfiction writer. I read lots of nonfiction. I read more nonfiction than fiction, but I don't really have a favorite nonfiction writer. I read lots of nonfiction books. I read more nonfiction books than any other type of book now. I'll still read some Ted Decker, for pleasure reading, which isn't that often anymore, but I do still get in some pleasure reading. But I don't really have a favorite nonfiction author, but I will tell you my favorite book of all time is Love You Forever. So for those of you who, again, have heard some of my other interviews, you know that Love You Forever is a children's book. It's a book that I was introduced to as a Head Start teacher many years ago. And that is a book that I fell in love with. I read it to my children when they were little. And now that I am a grandma, they are reading it to my grandchildren as well. So Love You Forever is my favorite all-time book. My favorite fiction writer is Ted Decker, but I don't really have a favorite nonfiction writer. All right. Thank you for that question. So I got a couple other questions that I got on some before this live stream started. And again, for those of you just joining, let me know who's here, and then also drop your questions in the comment box. If you have any questions about writing or anything about me, my process, my books, or anything like that, like I said, I'm an open book tonight just for a little while. So take advantage of it. All right, we got another question. Let's see. This says, do you know of any scams that may be geared towards new authors who need to have their books marketed? Good question. So Anita asked about any scams geared towards new authors regarding marketing their books. Scams, I don't tend to, at least not in the circles that I'm in, do I see a lot about scams. You want to be careful of your phishing schemes and things of that nature. But I just believe that whatever you're looking to do as far as your books, book marketing, things of that nature, that you should do, you should go through a vetting process. And I encourage that for anyone, whether it is deciding to get your book published, whether it's paying someone to help to market your book, there should be a vetting process. You should see other work that they've done. They should be able to tell you how often they are promoting the book, what types of promotions are they doing? Are they doing both low tech, high tech? Where are some of the areas? Do they understand your target audience? If they've never asked about your target audience, how are they going to be able to market your books to your particular audience? Or are they just marketing it to, again, their email list, their followers and things of that nature? So you have to go through a vetting process when you are looking to get your books marketed. And again, having a marketing strategy, having a marketing plan is very important for being able to sell your books. And I mentioned earlier that selling is different from publishing, which is different from writing the book. But I don't know of any particular scams. Nothing comes to mind. So if you know of some, let us know so we'll know what to be on the lookout for and to be aware of. But I don't know any specific scams necessarily, but I do believe that whatever you decide to do, there should be some vetting done in that process. All right, good question, Tanya. So it says, I'm revising my book. Do I need a new copyright and ISBN? Very good question. So if you are revising your book, I actually just did a video a couple weeks ago on my YouTube channel. If you don't follow Claire Aldin Publications on YouTube, please go and subscribe. It's a new YouTube channel and we're building content every week. But as far as revising your book, so if you are revising it and there are very few changes meaning, okay, you found a couple corrections, you found, a couple letters that should have been capitalized that weren't capitalized. If it's minor corrections, you could always go in, revise your manuscript and update the manuscript without a problem. However, if there are, like if you are adding a foreword, if you are adding again, some pages to a chapter, or you're revising chapters and adding more information or taking the information away, then yes, you will need to do what's known as a second edition. So you'll need a second edition of your book if you're doing the type of revising that I think you're talking about. Now, as far as the copyright, whenever there is a change, there should be updated information. So if you did not, sometimes I know as a new author, I made a lot of mistakes. I'll have to do another video on that another day, but I made a lot of mistakes as a new author. And if you did not do an official copyright with copyright.gov, as you're revising your book, you'll want to take the time to make sure that you send it in, do the official copyright. It recently went up. It was like $35 before. I think it might be $62 now, but you'll want to go through the process of submitting it for copyright. That way, if at any point in the next 70 years, someone tries to steal your stuff, you have it copywritten with the government. Now, as far as the ISBN, yes, you will need a new ISBN number. And that's because you now have a second edition. The second edition is not the same as the first edition. So with the second edition, you'll need a new ISBN number for your paperback. If you decide to do an ebook, you'll need a new ISBN for your ebook. And then if you do an audiobook, you'll also need an ISBN for your audiobook. So the ISBN is based on the format and not just the words inside the book itself. So the ISBN, the International Standard Book Number, is what ISBN stands for. That goes with the specific product that is created. So like I said, an ebook is going to need a separate ISBN number, and ebooks, depending on what platform you're on, may need multiple ISBN numbers. I'll give you an example. Kindle, if you're uploading to Amazon Kindle does not require you to have an ISBN. They assign what's known as an ASIN. So all books on Amazon Kindle have an ASIN, which is another unique identifier. Hi, Dr. Clark. Thanks for joining. It's another unique identifier that's used specifically on Amazon Kindle. But if you have an ebook that, for example, you want to make available through Smashwords or through some other online distributor, or if you are just uploading it to Barnes & Noble. So now you want to have your book on Amazon Kindle and Barnes & Noble. You cannot use the same number that you used on Amazon Kindle. You can't use that ASIN. Or if you decided I'm gonna have my own ISBN and you put that on Amazon Kindle, you will not be able to use that ISBN on Barnes and Noble. So in some cases, you'll need multiple ISBNs for your ebooks. But yes, you will need to have a new ISBN if you're revising your book and you need to do a second edition. As far as that copyright, again, if you've changed information in your book, particularly if you've added chapters, added sections, then yes, you will want to submit a new copyright for that book. And again, $62 is not a lot, especially if you want to protect it. And like I said, the copyright is protected for the next 70 years. So it's a worthy investment. So I hope I answered your question for Ms. Maddox. All right. Good. So as you're joining, go ahead. Any writing questions? I'm taking any writing questions in our live Q&A this evening. So go ahead and drop your writing questions in the comments. Anything that you want to ask. It's an open book for me today. So you can ask your own burning writing questions, or you can ask me questions about any of my books. And for those of you who may not be familiar with me, again, thanks for joining. My name is DeAndrea Matthews. I'm the founder and CEO of Claire Aldin Publications. Claire Aldin Publications is an award-winning hybrid publishing company that is accredited by the Better Business Bureau and is a member of the Independent Book Publishers Association. So I'm very proud of that fact. We have only been in business since 2017. So this is our third year in business. We have approximately 16 authors that we've worked with who are now first-time published authors. And it is a great feeling because all of them are African-American authors. My goal in having a publishing company is to help to diversify the publishing industry. Very few African-American authors tell their own stories. So a lot of the stories out there about the African-American community are from people who are from outside of that community. So I want to empower African-American authors in particular, but definitely authors from historically underrepresented backgrounds to publish their stories. I want us to be able to leave a written legacy. I was a kid that sat up under my grandparents and up under other people, listening to their stories, just reminiscing with them about their childhood, what they went through, things that happened. Again, all of this information that once your grandparents, once those older relatives, once our elders are gone, the information is gone unless you categorize it, unless you capture it. And again, I want to help people to be able to create written legacies for their families. So let's see. Next question. Do you publish thesis or research papers like a normal book? Funny you should say that, because I was just looking over my dissertation and I am still fighting with myself about how to publish it, whether I want to do it in sections because it's a lot of information or not. So the question is, do you publish thesis or research papers like a normal book? It depends. So you have to ask yourself as an author what your goals are. If your goal is to just get the information out there and say, "Yeah, I published a book," then great. Yep, you can publish it just like a normal book. But if you're really trying to teach, if you're trying to provide instruction, if it's something along those lines, then there are other ways that you can do that. There, again, are many, many products that you can have for just one manuscript. So, I know I talked about paperback. I know I've talked about ebook. I know I've talked about audiobook, but there's so many other products that you can create with the information, your own intellectual property. So when it comes to a thesis or research paper, it does not have to be treated like a normal book. There are workbooks that could be created, again, especially if you're doing more teaching or if you're using it for curriculum and things of that nature. You could do, again, a webinar, online series, web series. There's so many different things that you can do with the information. So it all depends on your goals and what your ultimate outcome is that you want to see happen with that information. So again, that's the type of topic, depending on what the thesis or research paper is about, that we can take a deeper dive and really look at what are some of those products that could be created depending on what your outcomes are for that particular literary information. Okay, hope that answered your question. Thank you, Anita, for dropping the website in there. All right, so again, I was talking a little bit about who I am. One of the things that you may know if you follow me, if you don't, I am the author of 6 books. So our newest book is available as an ebook. The paperback for the Overcomers Anthology will be available starting June 1st. So we're taking pre-orders. I've got some great co-authors that I'll be highlighting throughout this month as we do a soft virtual launch. But that's our latest book. I am the author of 6 books, as well as 5 book chapters and 2 academic journal articles. So I have not only the books that, I kind of promote all the time on the Claire Aldin Publications page, but 5 book chapters. 4 of them are about diversity and inclusion. I've been doing diversity and inclusion work for about 15 years, but for those of you who've heard me speak, because I'm also an international speaker, I talk about diversity and inclusion being something that I inherited, because diversity and inclusion has been embedded in my family for at least 5 generations. We have 5 generations of interracial relationships in my family, as well as numerous other topics and aspects of diversity. So diversity and inclusion I've been officially doing for 15 years, but again, it goes back much longer than that. So that's the topic of 4 of my book chapters. And then the other book chapter is on entrepreneurship. So I have worked with some, again, wonderful authors, wonderful co-authors. And then I have 2 academic journal articles. One is in the Journal for the Poor and Poor and Underserved, I think it is. And that's through Johns Hopkins University Press. And then I have a new academic journal article that should be coming out later this year, hopefully with no delay. And that is going to be in academic medicine. So lots of different hats that I wear as far as the writing process and the work that I do. So Brian wants to know, what was my inspiration for writing? Good question. How do I answer this? So my inspiration for writing is, just like I mentioned before, really to leave a written legacy. I'm not going to be here forever. For anyone who knows me, I say that probably too often for my kids' sake, but, they hate it when I talk about, me not being here. But in all actuality, we all have to prepare for when we are no longer here. And I want to be able to leave a legacy in the earth realm, or leave a written legacy that shares just a part of what I knew, a part of what I can impart to others, so they don't have to make the same mistakes. They don't have to go down the same road. They can learn from what I've done, what I've experienced, and continue from that point and move forward. So that's a part of it, leaving that legacy, that written legacy. I also am a firm believer that we're supposed to leave an inheritance for our children's children. So part of the reason that I also started Claire Aldin Publications, which is named after me and my husband, a part of the reason I started Claire Aldin Publications is to have a vehicle for creating generational wealth. We see people in business, and we know that a lot of times we hear about, parents or sons and fathers particularly passing their business down to their children. I want to have some type of legacy in that way as well, an entrepreneurial legacy to leave to my children and my children's children. Again, continuing to promote the voice of the underserved, the voice of those from historically underrepresented backgrounds, telling our story and making a difference, making an impact in the world in general, but in the publishing world specifically. So that's a part of my inspiration for writing. I fell in love with reading and writing at a very, very young age. Again, I had the classics around me growing up. In our home library, we had Robert Louis Stevenson. We had uh, um, Shakespeare. My first books, I had hardcover books, but my first book was Little Women by Louise May Alcott. So, writing and reading has been a part of my life since before I started school. And then when I was in school, I was a part of a broadcast with Detroit Public Television called Reading Road Quiz. And that I participated in third, fourth, and fifth grade. And we read, like I say, it felt like to me as a kid, about 100 books that we had to read each school year to be able to participate in this game show. It was a game show. We had to read books. We had to hit the buzzer and answer the questions in order to try and win prizes for our elementary school. So I fell in love with reading then. And I knew then that one day I wanted to be an author. Fast forward to my undergraduate experience. I actually minored in children's literature because I always thought that I would write children's books because I fell in love with writing and reading as a child. I have yet to write a children's book, but that's okay. I still fell in love with reading and writing then, and I knew I wanted to be an author then. So thanks for your question, Brian. All right. Don't see any more questions yet. Again, if you have questions, now is your time. Go ahead and drop them in the comments. So one of the questions that I got before the live stream began, how long have you been writing? Again, moving from that whole childhood experience that I just shared with you, I officially began writing. And I say officially because that means when I actually started taking it serious. I officially began writing in 2012. Now, there were some projects that I had been just dabbling with, write a few things down here and there over the years, but I didn't get serious about it until 2012. And when I made up in my mind that I'm going to actually pursue becoming an author, true to my style, I went to the library. I got as many books as I could find on writing, on publishing, on just, setting and point of view and just every aspect of writing that you could think about. I got those books and I took copious notes, and I had this huge binder and huge notebook full of notes so that I would know as much about the process as possible. In addition to doing my own personal research, I joined the Motown Writers Network. So that was my first meetup that I joined, and I met the fabulous Sylvia Hubbard, who is the founder of the Motown Writers Network. I met my first book cover designer at that meeting. I also connected with my first editor at that meeting. And again, just a lot of great things flowed out of that experience. Some of those people I'm still connected to today. So I've been writing officially since 2012. And that's where my official writing career began. All right, no questions yet. All right, Facebook, come on, give me some more questions. I got a couple more over here that I got before the broadcast began. So the question is, what's the process for first-time writers? What are the steps to follow? So if you are a first-time writer, like I mentioned before, the steps that I would recommend following would be, again, to do that brain dump, from there to do a brainstorming session, from the brainstorming session to do a mind map. The mind map helps you to create an outline. The outline really gives you the format and the skeleton for what you're going to write. And then you just start filling it in from there. And as you're filling it in, there may be some additional research that you have to do. And again, that's true whether it's fiction or nonfiction. If you're writing fiction, you still may need to do some research because, again, it might be historical fiction. It might be set in a particular time frame, and you'll have to go and figure out what that time frame looked like. What did they dress like? What did they sound like? And all of those things. If it is nonfiction, you'll want to see what the other literary works are in that field, in that category, in that subject area, and then look for any gaps to make sure that you understand what you're contributing to, because you're contributing to a body of work that already exists. You want to make sure that you have read the other people and the other authors who've written something about that treatise, about that particular topic. And again, find the gap, find where your information fits, because the other thing you'll want to be able to do is as you're looking at promotions and marketing, you want to be able to talk about what's different about your book. What is your, what we refer to as a UVP? What is your unique value proposition? What's different about your book versus, say, a book by a very popular author who wrote on the same topic? So these are all questions that you can ask yourself as a first-time writer. And again, there are specific questions that you should know. You should know who your target audience is. A lot of times when working with first-time authors, I'll ask, well, who's your target audience? Oh, well, my book is for everyone. Nope, your book's not for everyone. Everyone, you might think because your friends and family support you and they buy your book, that book is for them. But nope, it's not. There's a particular body of people that your book is typically for, whether it's male, female, whether it's a certain age, whether it's a certain socioeconomic status, where do they work, where do they play, what are their hobbies? All those things are things that you think about when it comes to target audience. And then as I'm working with our writers, I narrow it down from target audience, even a little more specific to an ideal reader. So say, for example, if someone writes a book and their target audience are African American women between the ages of 35 and 45 who earn between $50,000 and $65,000 per year, who are college educated, so on and so forth. So if that is your target audience, great. But when you look at ideal reader, your ideal reader might be DeAndrea Matthews. Okay. So you'll want to know not just your target audience, but think about one person in particular and write that book as if you're having an intimate conversation with that person, with that ideal reader. All right, so it says, many people do not publish their books because they think it is too expensive. What options do authors have that they can use to publish their books without breaking the bank? Very good question. So obviously there are multiple options available when it comes to publishing their books, but I will tell you something that is gaining popularity when it comes to publishing your books. So that is doing, you can do it a couple different ways. You can either get sponsorships. Say, for example, if you are writing a book and say, for example, I have a couple people who absolutely love Pepsi products. So say you absolutely love Pepsi products for the last 50 years. That is your drink. You got to have one every day. Maybe you can work up some type of sponsorship so that Pepsi can support you. And guess what? You're feeding your habit and you're paying for your book project. So sponsorships are one way that you can support the publishing of your book. You could also do a pre-order campaign. Now, with the pre-order campaign, I want to caution you because with pre-orders, most of the time when I do pre-orders with our authors, it is typically anywhere from 2 weeks before to about 6 weeks before your book comes out. And that is within what I call my comfort zone, because the one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to take people's money and say, okay, the book is going to be done at a certain time, and then it's not available, because people lose trust in you. And at the end of the day, all you have is your word. So you want to make sure that you're a woman of your word, you're a man of your word. So that's why I only do it within 2 to 6 weeks. Now, some people have done 6-month campaigns. Some people have done a pre-launch or pre-order campaign when they first start writing their book. So it's all up to you. And again, you can set it at different levels, kind of like a crowdfunding, not similar to a GoFundMe. Crowdfunding is a little bit different because with crowdfunding, you have packages at different prices. So you might offer, say, for example, if your book is going to be $15, you might offer a special where you get an autographed copy of your book, shipping included, for $15 versus, $15 buying it off the shelf with no autograph and shipping is not included. Or you might offer at the next level $25 for an autographed copy of the book and a t-shirt. Or you might offer, depending on what your topic is, you can get really creative when it comes to these kind of gifts and things of that nature that go along with it. For example, there's a wonderful woman that I'm in communication with who does the bracelets, the lupus bracelets. So if I want to do a gift package, I can include my 31-day devotional for lupus warriors. I can include one of those lupus bracelets and create a wonderful gift package. And that could have been a great option for a pre-order campaign. So there are different things that you can do before your book is written to raise money to pay for the publishing process itself. That's something that, depending on your topic, depending on your genre, of course, you can sit down and schedule a session so we could talk about that further. But those are 2 ways where you're not actually coming out of your pocket to pay for it. Of course, there are, traditional ways where you can kind of put the money up front to pay for the editing. Editing is probably the most expensive part of the process. But pay for a professional editor, paying for the book cover, paying for, again, the purchase of the ISBN and all of those other details that go into creating the book. And then make sure that when you are setting your book promotion plan, or when you're creating your marketing plan, you know exactly how much you spent as far as the investment in the book, so that you know how much you need to make or how many books you need to sell in order to break even. That way, everything above that is going to be your profit. As an author, you'll want to be able to track those expenses, track that income. You should be keeping records of this. It shouldn't just be, oh, well, I sold 250 books, I'm good. But you should know exactly what your income is. You should know exactly what your expenses are. And that's your responsibility to be able to track those costs. So I hope that answers your question. Let me know if you got another part of that question, Anita, okay? All right. Continue to drop your questions in the comments. I love this. So let me know what other questions I can answer for you about the writing process. I got a couple more over here that I got before the live stream began. So the next one is, as a first-time writer, what should my topic be? So as a first-time writer, what should my topic be? As a first-time writer, you'll want to write what you know about. So it's nice to say, hey, I haven't read a book on this topic. I think I'll write a book on this topic. But if you don't really know anything about that topic, might not be a good idea. So think first about the types of things that you enjoy, the things that you really like, and then write about something like that. So what is it that you like? What is it that you know? What is it that you have experience with? You can kind of, again, start with that brain dump and try and figure it out from there. Develop some ideas around things that you like, things that you enjoy. What do you spend your time doing? What are your hobbies? Those are all things that you can explore to see what you really want to write about. And then ultimately, what problem are you trying to solve? If you're writing a nonfiction book, nonfiction books should solve a problem. So what is the problem that you solve? What's the solution that you offer? That's what you should think about when it comes to nonfiction. If you're writing a fiction book, most fiction books are for fantasy or escapism. You're trying to get away from the place you're in right now and explore this other land, explore this other possibility. So you're right there with the fiction characters in the setting. And again, you're temporarily transported into whatever the scene is that you're entering in that book. So for fiction, you'll want to be able to think about the fantasy or the escapism that you're creating for your readers. For nonfiction, what is the problem that you solve? What is the solution that you provide? All right, we talked about writer's block already. We talked about my favorite writers. All right, how many pages should your first book be? Oh, good question. So that really depends on your genre. What are you writing about? That would determine how long your first book should be. And quite honestly, in this day and age, with the way things are with digital marketing and digital publishing and all of that, you could write a 25-page ebook and use it as a lead magnet to build your email subscription list on your website. You could, I mean, it doesn't have to be a long book. It depends on, again, what are your goals? If your goal is to build your email subscription list, then again, you could do a lead magnet, a funnel magnet or funnel book for your website. You could offer lots of different things depending on what your goals are. So you really want to think about what your goals are in writing that book in the first place. And that would help to determine how many pages it should be, because that's going to drive really the whole impetus behind the project. So how many pages, different genres have different page counts, whether you're looking to write a novel versus a novella. Obviously, a novella is a little bit shorter than a novel. There are full-length novels. There are shorter. There are fan fiction. It's all types of things. So it really depends on what your idea is and what your subject matter is, how many pages that really should be. All right. Next question. In writing fiction, how does an author incorporate real and or historical references realistically while keeping it fiction? Very good question. So it can still be fiction and you can still incorporate actual things, because in all honesty, as a writer, we get our inspiration from around us every single day. So even though we might change the names and the identity and the ethnic background and gender and all of that, there's some inspiration coming from somewhere for a lot of the characters that you see in books. So in writing fiction, you can incorporate real aspects of real people. You can incorporate historical references and it still be fiction. So again, it could be realistic fiction. It could be historical fiction. There are lots of different genres that could come under as realistic fiction, even though, some aspects of the story, or even the majority of the story, is made up. It's fiction. It's not based on reality. But again, adding that element of realism is a very effective way of writing. So fiction means it's not real. It's, made up for the majority, but you want to make sure that you're not calling it nonfiction when it incorporates some elements that are not true. Okay. Let's see. You're welcome, Dr. Clark. Happy to share my ideas and just parts of the process. All right. Let's see. Did you say the writing process you use is in a YouTube post? It's actually in a webinar. So there was a webinar that I did. I've done a few now, probably 5 or 6. So I will have to post the link for the webinar. I am building our YouTube page. So there's some information already on our YouTube page. So if you don't already subscribe, please subscribe to Claire Aldin Publications on YouTube. We are building our YouTube channel. It's a brand new YouTube channel, but there are some videos over there. I forgot, maybe about 10 or 12 videos now, but I don't know that the writing process is a part of that. But I do know I went into detail in the webinar that I did about that writing process. So that will be posted. And I'll make sure we drop that in the comments from the webinar platform that I use. Good question. All right. Are there any other questions? If there are not any other questions, we're going to start winding down, but I appreciate everything that we've talked about so far. Let me know in the comments if you would like for me to do this more often. This is our first live writing Q&A, but I want to be able to answer your questions because there's so much misinformation out there, and I want to be hopefully a trusted voice that can provide some accuracy and provide some clarity for any questions that you have as writers, whether you're a new writer, brand new writer working on your book for the first time, or whether you're a seasoned author with a few books under your belt. So let me know if you want me to do something like this monthly. And then, of course, you could always submit your questions to our email. If you'd like to email us, our email is info@clairealdin.com. The email again is info, I-N-F-O, at Claire Aldin, CLAIREALDIN.com. So info@clairealdin.com is our email address. Feel free to email anytime if you've got questions. Great. We will either respond to you directly, or if we start doing these monthly live Q&As, then we could always go back and include your question in the next one that we do. All right. I'm just double checking to make sure I did not miss any questions. Excellent. Yes, continue this monthly. Wonderful. All right. So it sounds like we're going to be doing this monthly. I hope that you will share this broadcast and share it with other writers or other people you know who are thinking about becoming a writer, or who might be thinking about writing their second book or a sequel. So let me know what questions you have in the meantime. I look forward to doing this monthly with you. And again, let me know if you have any questions. Follow us on social media. We're not only on Facebook, but we're also on Instagram and Twitter. So we can be found at Claire Aldin on any of those channels. I look forward to sharing with you. Again, go over, subscribe to our YouTube page, Claire Aldin Publications on YouTube. I'm going to be dropping videos at least weekly so that we can continue to build our page and build the knowledge as well as the tools for first-time authors. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. This has been wonderful. I hope you've learned something, and please remember to share the broadcast with someone else. Thank you so much. Again, this is Dr. DeAndrea Matthews, the founder and CEO of Claire Aldin Publications. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.